Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Zoom into Wine. It's time for the show and your host, Ian Blackburn.
All right, good evening, everybody. My name is Ian Blackburn, and I'm here to talk to you about Sancerre tonight. Sancerre is certainly a very famous wine region in France and a very popular wine to order out in restaurants. So I figured we'd spend a little bit of a focus tonight on the region itself, get into some of the details on three very lovely wines. And we have a beautiful audience with us tonight to talk about some of the wines we sent out. If you've never done this before with us, welcome. We are a wine education business that pivoted to Zoom, but we have a Zoom into Wine calendar on our website. You can either go to zoomintowine.com or check us out on the merchantofwine.com. Merchant of Wine is my family's wine store, and we accompany these Zooms with the opportunity to buy the bottle kit or the tasting kit. And we have some really fun activities that are coming down the pipe here, including next week's Italian Wine Challenge. It's a dinner where you have the option of coming in and dining with us live, or you can have the dinner delivered to your home, or if you're outside of the dining room circle for delivery, you can come pick it up, or we can even just ship you the wines so that you could do the dinner with us. We are going to taste 15 different Italian wines blind on the dinner. One of the biggest events that we'll do this month will be the Stars event, always a highlight of our business. We get some great wine personalities together, and Stars of Wine is really kind of a showcase for us. We've got 6 dynamic producers joining us, and when you purchase that event, you'll be buying it actually from the other side of our business, the Wine Cloud, where we have Learn About Wine, Wine LA, and our Stars of Wine's products. And on this particular event, we have 6 truly amazing wineries from New Zealand. We have Amsfield from Napa Valley, a small high-end producer named Kale. Really awesome stuff. Best New Zealand Pinot, and a truly special small producer from the Napa Valley. Arguably the best Chardonnay producer in Australia, Lewin Estate, will be on the Zoom with us. We'll be up in Sonoma for Mary Edwards, tasting Sauvignon Blanc with their winemaking professional. And we'll be back down in New Zealand tasting their Sauvignon Blanc with the family that owns and operates Saracen. So this is truly a discussion. Oh, we're also in Australia with a little Shiraz from Heathcote. Tellurin is a beautiful Shiraz. I think you'll be blown away. And really the topicality here, the theme is that we're going to be discussing the wines. We call it a versus tasting, but it's really just a chance to hear the different perspectives on wine live from New Zealand. At the same time, we're live in Australia and California. And it's really going to be a fun way to taste 6 different awesome wines. And you did not miss that. This wine is on a big sale. We really want a big audience for this. It is a little bit harder to sell this event than it would be, say, a big Cabernet festival or a Pinot Noir festival. But the wines here are tremendous, and it's right now it's half off, $29.50 to do the flight, and only $150 to get all 6 bottles of wine. That's a $75 bottle of New Zealand Pinot, a $75 bottle of Napa Valley Syrah, a $50 bottle of Chardonnay from Australia, a $40 to $50 Sauvignon Blanc from Sonoma, and a great value from Saracen, a wine that sells for just less than $20, and then a $50 Shiraz from Australia. So you get all of that in your tasting kit, $150. You might want to jump on that. And those are the type of things that we're doing to keep our business around. We want to make sure that we remain relevant and provide you with a lot of stimulating content and really get the winemakers on the Zooms to enjoy. It is a bit challenging at 7 o'clock at night to get a couple of wine regions on a Zoom, like in Sancerre. where it's probably 3 in the morning. So we go without our winemaking accompaniment tonight, but we do have 3 amazing wines and a really awesome audience. So I just want to welcome you all and say thank you for joining me. It's good to see many of you again. Hi, Susan. Hi, Catherine. Good to see you. Hi, Sue Green. Good to see you. Hi, Tony. Kale Rowe. Good to see you both. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. Hi, Teresa. Lisa Test. We have Satsuko in Japan. And the Costa Bravo family out there in beautiful Chino Hills, I think, if that's...
Yes, delightful. Sounds great.
When I went to Cal Poly, I lived in Chino Hills, so I know the slogan. All right. So let me get our PowerPoint up and going and get some wine tasting going on as well. All right, Sancerre. We got 3 of them. I'm not making this blind. Oftentimes we do it blind. These wines are really close in price point, and this is going to be fairly subjective to see which one you really like the most. I'll take you into the event first and just kind of show you the wines. Wine number 1 tonight is actually from Christophe Moreau. The family, it's been around for over 125 years. We're tasting their Le Buffon. It's right next to a really important vineyard called Montans, and it is about $35. That'll be wine number 1. Wine number 2, Jean-Max Roger, the Cailleret, or the Stone, as we'll come to see tonight. This got some really good marks by myself. Not a lot of press on some of these smaller producers, but I do rate some of those wines that need some highlight, what I think about them. I put my own personal opinion on them, my biased, educated personal self. This wine I think you're really going to enjoy, Jean-Max Roger. Even if I can't speak French, please understand. I really want to. Francois Crochet is a really famous producer, top quality. Been exposed to this wine for many years. It did pick up a 90-point review in Wine Enthusiast. This is a biodynamic house that is also certified organic, and all 3 of these wines are going to be made in very similar fashion. But let's get into our PowerPoint, and then we can reveal that a little bit more. Let's get some wine in the glass and take a look at the map. When we think of France, down at the bottom you got the map of France. You've got the Loire Valley and the Loire River running from east to west, and it is a really important body of water. And it has streams and inlets coming from all directions. Of course, there's plenty of rain in a common year. Of course, the world's been in drought, and it does impact France as well. Maybe a little less in places like this, but it certainly can, and we have other impacts as well. As we're talking about Sancerre today, and next year we may not be able to do that because there will be no 2021 harvest in Sancerre due to hail this year. Hail and frost and issues that really decimated the crop. So the 2021 is basically a complete write-off in the Sancerre region. It has put a lot of pressure on this region for selling wine, and there was about a 30-day period where California distributors were completely out of Sancerre. They have taken some pretty big stocks of the 2019s, and probably the 2020s will be that way, but 2021 will cause the 2020 vintage to have to last 2 years, not just one. So we'll see some price pressure, and we'll see some shortages, and maybe even some new brands come into the market that never had a distributor, because that's what happens. All right, so when we look at the greater Loire Valley, when we see that river running, or set of rivers running across the France, and we see also the down to the bottom right, these wonderful tributary, these other areas that connect into Sancerre, we see different little nuances, and this area here is starting to get some attention for making some different types of wines, because there's going to be some pressure on areas like Sancerre. You're going to see the outlying areas coming into markets like Touraine, Sauvignon Blanc from Touraine. This is or Rouy. This area in here, where there's just some really nice little farmer wines, this is what we're going to see kind of fill in the gap, and it will really give an opportunity. You know, this kind of reminds me of in Bordeaux, the boats kind of move into the ports in Bordeaux and fill up with wine. And in the olden days, when Bordeaux ran out of wine, they would just keep going down the river to see, oh, do you have wine in Margaux? Do you have wine down in you know, the lower southern part of Bordeaux? No, you just keep going, and that's how some of the southern Appalachian wines became discovered, because Bordeaux didn't always have wine. So this has kind of an upside for some of these outlying areas. Sancerre being right here, and Pouilly-Fumé, or Pouilly-sur-Loire is the name of the town, but the wine Pouilly-Fumé comes right next door. And the stylistic difference between the two can be very, the wines can be very similar, but they do tend to put a little bit of wood, a little more wood even, on the wines in Pouilly-sur-Loire and Pouilly-Fumé. And in fact, that was the town that Robert Mondavi visited. He fell in love with the wines there, and he said, I love the idea of Fumé, and the word Fumé Blanc was coined after he tasted and explored the wines in this area. But these wines do tend to have barrel fermentation. They go through a little bit different winemaking regimen, but the soils are pretty similar, and you do obviously get the same Sauvignon Blanc focus. This is a discussion tonight of Sauvignon Blanc. The wines that are called Sancerre, that are white, are made from Sauvignon Blanc. They can make Pinot Noir in Sancerre, and we even get some rosé from that Pinot Noir. So a nice Sancerre rosé can be quite nice as well. When we look at the region or the area known as Sancerre, it, kind of like the Napa Valley, has a lot of small, nuanced towns that maybe you don't think of separating, but that may be a future way that this area elevates a little bit more as we get to a little more specialization. People start to learn more about where these wines come from. But these are the primary communes of Sancerre, and we'll explore each one wine by wine. So this first wine, and you'll get a lot of references to cheese. My assistant said, you should have sent everybody some cheese with the wine. It was obviously a good idea, but it's a lot of work sending cheese. So we hope that you are encouraged to grab some cheese. If you have any Chèvre, this is a super important area for Chèvre, a goat cheese, right up in Sancerre, and absolutely the appropriate pairing. So as I mentioned quickly as we were going over the highlights of the wines that we're going to taste tonight, this wine comes from an important vineyard, beautiful, rocky, slightly sloped vineyard right next to what they would consider a Grand Cru site. And so it's not a bad neighborhood, and really some noble ground here. calcareous, steep slopes, vinification. Grapes are pressed and the juice is allowed to settle prior to fermentation, which then takes place in stainless steel vats, where the wine remains for 6 to 8 months, and then it's lightly filtered and bottled. All three of these wines are 2019, so they have a lot in common. This first house was established in 1895, and Christophe Moreau, which also has another label under his name, Christophe Moreau, but this is under the name Roger and Christophe Moreau, maybe feeding different parts of the family. But this does carry the Moreau's reputation, which is quite good. And it is a family owned and operated, smaller producer, not quite of the same significance as some of the larger well-known producers. This was introduced to me by a smaller portfolio. And the vines here are planted on limestone rich soil, and we tend to talk about the Cailleret or the Caillot or whatever the name for the rock, the roche. There's so many different ways that they have a French term for the rock. But if you look at that minerality, you could just see what you're about to smell in the glass, the limestone. Now, limestone, whether you know it or not, is basically composed of petrified sea sediment from millions and millions of years ago when the planet was covered by water. In some places, that water pooled a little deeper, a little longer, and so a little bit more of that limestone is present. And certainly in Sancerre, it is quite stony and mineral rich. Here is, we're not going to talk about wine number 2 yet. Let's talk about wine number 1, which is in your glass. And cheers, everybody. Hope you guys enjoy. Salut. Let me take off my little virtual background so my glass doesn't disappear. Hope everybody had a good day today. Getting better one day at a time around here. I would love to encourage you to use the chat box or even speak out loud. We're small, but high quality group, and I'd love to hear your comments and feedback about the wines as you're tasting it. We did send out quite a few sets for this tasting, so it's nice to see a little grouping here. We've had some pretty small Zooms in the past couple of months. Where you guys been?
Watching you on Facebook, so we don't have to do our makeup.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you watch us on Facebook. That's nice.
Oh, we need to make sure. Well, we've been supporting Ian.
Yes,
so
the Costa Bravos have been weighing in regularly, so it's always good to see you.
It doesn't seem to be a whole lot on the nose. Maybe ours is a little cold, but the palate, it's so I don't know. It's very it's creamy. That acidity that sometimes really sticks out in Sancerre. It's very smooth and it's there, but it's very well integrated. I think it's a really nice drinking Sancerre, especially with some goat cheese, like you just said.
Yeah, and I think if you back away from this glass, and if your wines are super cold, they will be a little harder to taste.
No.
But as they warm, or as you warm them, that picture that we saw with that rock is really what I'm smelling in the top of the nose here. This is not a highly fragrant fruit orientation. It's very much a earth play, and they're that's really what we're going to see here tonight. It's a little bit of philosophical differences about what they want to showcase. When you have minerality like that, you don't cover it up with a bunch of winemaking, oak and cream and butter and things like that. You just want to show off that rocky minerality, because this wine is ultimately, for a great meal, and really will reward, even though it's maybe a little less organized in the nose, as far as like being so punctuated, I think it has that restraint that allows the food to really shine through here. And when you taste it, you'll feel that exhilarating acidity. These wines have a pH down around 3, and they just drill into your teeth.
I'm finding it really mellow, and I mean it's a lovely drinking wine.
Yeah,
I'm enjoying it a lot.
Good. Yeah, this is one that kind of had to grow on me a little bit. The style is much more of a wine of place more than a wine of winemaking, a wine of great ripeness and richness. You might find different things in these 3 wines that you enjoy in different ways. But here, I think this is just a really classic, very restrained, and definitely a wine of place. They're very proud of the place. It's family owned and operated, and it's singular in that way too. Sometimes when you blend from multiple vineyards, you can create kind of different layers and kind of cover all the, if I were going to try to cover the screen with my hands, from back here, I don't do a very good job, but you get pretty close. But when you start to take multiple pieces, some from down here and some from up here, and you put them together, you can really pull together a bigger wine perspective, touching different parts of your palate and really seeing a bigger picture come into play. And that's one of the benefits and one of the challenges of making a wine from a singular vineyard site with a singular soil selection and a singular hillside with a very accurate kind of exposition with sunshine and the type of rain. They probably pick it in one day, and it's boom, you're done. And if you blend multiple sites together, you can sometimes get something that has a little bit more texture and character. But I think in this particular example, less is giving us more, because you can really hone in on that site and smell that place. And I love the way the wine is presented. It's like just sticking a rock in your mouth, and which might not sound that great, but you really smell that rocky minerality and then feel the length. It's not powerful, but it's got some length and vibration and energy, and it just continues to go, and it leaves your palate super refreshed and clean, and there's just absolutely nothing lingering on the finish. Let's go into wine number 2. I love to learn from Sauvignon Blanc, because it is there's really not much you can do to it. Or you can really destroy the sense of its place and some of that elegance. But here, really what they are showing off are the quality of their vineyards and the quality of their grape growing, because the winemaking is just so simplistic. You press the fruit, you move it to an inert container like stainless steel that has relatively no impact. You keep things fresh and cold and away from oxidation. You let it settle after fermentation, and you bottle it. And that is Sauvignon Blanc. And that, I don't care if you're making it in New Zealand or in California, that's the way most people do it. Now, the introduction of wood can come into play in some higher tier examples, and it's not the wood that makes it higher tier, it's the expectation that they're trying to fulfill. So they add some wood to give it a little bit more gusto and give you more return on your investment. Whether that is right or not is subjective, but this is like the most naked wine possible is Sauvignon Blanc, and that's what I love about it. We're going to go into wine number 2. Jean-Max Roger Cuvée Le Cailloux. This is 2019 as well. Now, when we look at the little communes, we're in Boo. I think it's Boo, not Bowie, but it could be Bowie. If anybody knows, I would appreciate the correction. If you studied French, which I studied Spanish, and not very well, by the way. So when we get into the towns, and boy, if you were in a helicopter and you were flying over the top of every town, they all pretty much look like that, from every angle. Really cute little towns, storybook towns, cobblestone streets. And this family dates back to the 17th century. They have 26 hectares. Basically multiply that by 2.3, and it's somewhere around 60 acres. And in 2004, 2 of the sons, there's always a third son that tells the others to flips them off and goes and works in tech and makes a lot of money. The other 2 stayed back at the winery, Etienne and Thibault. And they have different properties and grow some different things like Pinot Noir. There's a town here that's mentioned I wanted to highlight. Menetou-Salon. This is an AOC right outside of Sancerre that makes some damn good Sauvignon Blanc. And in the future, if you want to look for some value on a French wine list in a great restaurant, you'll see the Sancerre and all 3 of these Sancerres in a French restaurant will be $75 to $90. Maybe even a few bucks more if it's in a hotel. So look right below Sancerre and find Menetou-Salon. It's a great alternative. I don't have any currently, but the prices of Sancerre stay pretty competitive, and when they start to go up, I bet you'll find a Menetou-Salon on my list somewhere in the $25 range. This is what Sancerre ends up looking like, especially with their kind of monoculture growing Sauvignon Blanc. There certainly are sites that are growing Pinot Noir as well, but most of them are in harvest at this time, or not in Sancerre because they don't get a 2021. But they're probably out there getting things set up for a better year with 2022. I'm sure someone is able to make a little bit of wine in 2021, but when the news press and the world hears the reports about 100% crop losses, it becomes a vintage that not very many importers are going to get excited about selling. And we're talking about like 5% of normal in supply, so there probably won't be any coming to America. And of course, in this area, just like most areas, they got a little into that, industrialized, hey, the vineyard needs to look like a Japanese garden type of thing that happened in the 1980s, 1990s. And we've kind of come full circle and now really propagate the space between the vines, between the rows, with a series of different vegetables and flowers that attract the right type of balance so that this vineyard can defend itself by attracting the right type of bugs and the right number of every bug needs to have someone else that's going to eat it. So, because otherwise the ladybugs will take over the entire vineyard. So we need to have balance in the vineyard, and that's what they establish with these type of plantings. Plus, they're also feeding the ground nutrients, keeping it alive, and that is, by definition, sustainable. Here's one of the ancient caves dating back in time. So this particular soil, again, just that rocky minerality is right there on top of the soil. They don't have to dig down to find that. This type of rocky minerality really elevates the acidity in wine, elevates the power of the hydrogen, the pH. These wines, again, carry pH is very close to 3.1, 3.2. And in a typical glass of Sancerre, you're going to get that grapefruit and lemon. Certainly a good amount of a floral characteristic. There's almost like a chalkiness that you can smell. And I'd love to hear some of the things that you're smelling in wine number 2.
I'm finding that the aroma is actually much stronger than the palate, which is interesting.
The aromas of the flowers and the grapefruit, and then the palate is just pretty subtle, right?
Yeah.
Softer.
Yeah, and just kind of allow a little bit of air to come through your palate as you're tasting. Just pull it in, and you can feel the drying the acidity, just kind of really chiseling away in your teeth. That type of sensation will stick around for 10, 15, 20 seconds.
Because something different. Junction. Well, that too. This one I taste fruit on, and I didn't taste any fruit in the other one.
Yeah, I do think that there's something a little more ripe and not quite as mineral focused, but there still is some here, and it's potentially a little bit more complex than the first one. I get a little bit more fragrant gooseberry kind of I don't know if you've ever had gooseberries. They do have them now in California, especially at the farmers markets. All kinds of sour those things bring, and they just make your mouth salivate. But they're a really nice complement to any kind of a fruit salad or something, and that's a real primary nose and fruit flavor. You can go through now. If you go to the farmers markets too, there's so many different melons, or at least there were. I think the melon season's usually so short. But did anybody have any of these new melons that came into the marketplace? I had one called a lemon drop. There were just all these little teeny things that they're really bringing into the marketplace that make melon interesting again. It's not just cantaloupe anymore.
Or the worst, honeydew.
Or honeydew.
Putting you back on me. All right, yeah, you can. I'm rude.
I do love the nose almost has like perfume like tendencies, right? It's got this really nice, pretty, soft floral element. And there's something very pretty in the nose of this wine number 2. I think a lot of sommelier purists may be a little bit more turned on by that rocky minerality in wine number 1, whereas some of us might find a little bit more intrigue in this wine number 2. That perfume is pretty cool. Jeff, I'm still envious of your computer's camera. It's like watching the TV show The Office, the way it zooms in on your face. That's just does it on its own, right?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? Yes. No, it does. It's called like center stage. It just you can turn it on or off on Zoom. So
Yeah.
it's kind of funky.
I'm gonna find out about it. Might see it happening here. So
Home like
questions,
5
please.
minutes before this began, and these wines were in my car the entire time. It's been a crazy day. So what difference would it be between now if this had been this way it is now and versus if it had been chilled? Would it have been tampered down on the?
Right. So are they hot?
Oh no, they're just kind of almost room temperature. Yeah.
I think.
I mean, I'm tasting more than just usually when they're super cold. I get a lot of alcohol in my wine when I drink wines at first, and this I'm getting more flavor. So.
Okay. Yeah, and I think you can sometimes when they're warm, you can actually smell the alcohol even more, because the alcohol is quite volatile. So as it's warmer, the presence of alcohol you tend to smell more, but you also smell everything else a little bit more. And because the alcohols here are all down around 13%, that's pretty restrained. And if we were drinking Napa Cab, it might be almost offensive at room temperature, warm room temperature. And you could chill these down pretty quickly if you drop them in some ice with a little water. Just spin those little vials around in some ice for a second. You bring them down 5 degrees and they will change radically. And that's really going to be kind of the optimal tasting temperatures, just cooler than room, for you to really explore the boundaries of the wine and what everything that you're getting in the glass.
I'll have to do that with what's left in them. see how they change. Yeah,
I love your
just
honesty.
the way
Love
the
your
day
honesty.
kind of rolled.
I love the honesty.
I was just going to say that I think mine are warming up now, and there's quite a change. I think mine were at the perfect temperature in the beginning, and I did get fruit from both of these first two wines, and I felt like the mouthfeel on the first one was overwhelming. That just balanced the acid, and somewhat on the second as well. Not that the minerality isn't there, but as they're warming, I'm losing that pretty quickly.
So you're losing their balance. Is what you're saying. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. I like that. Yeah. So let's get into wine number 3 before we fall off the boat. And this is a
I
wine.
do like your shirt though, Ian. Very springy today.
I got to tell you, I wish they made it in 5 colors. I love this shirt.
Usually you're very drab, so today you brought the spring.
I am trying to embrace the wardrobe a little bit more. Working in the wine store, it's quite cold here. Usually I have to throw a coat on because we keep the air conditioner blowing. But I was boxing wine up right until the program started, so I was almost in a sweat. But I got this shirt. It's made in Los Angeles. I'm looking for small, not expensive, but small boutique producers that are domestic here in LA. A lot of my friends are in that business, and I fell in love with this one. My friends at Community in downtown LA, they make shoes that are amazing in downtown LA. And if you are ever in the Arts District, maybe walking to or going to dinner at Girl and the Goat, they're next to Blue Bottle Coffee, and you can walk into their little shoe store. They're the nicest people in the world. And during COVID, they didn't make shoes. They made PPE, yeah?
Yep.
Protective clothing. They shut down their shoemaking and made protective clothing for nurses and stuff. These are truly amazing people.
Ian, is it in the alleyway next to Girl and the Goat? We were just there, actually.
Oh, we're actually across the street next to Blue Bottle.
Across this.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. I'll have to check that out. Thanks.
Thank you.
And how was your girl and the goat experience?
Oh, we went brunch, we went dinner.
Yeah,
We're going back for lunch and brunch and dinner again.
Nice.
it's quite nice. It's quite nice. Yes.
That's good.
Gotta go.
I've heard nothing but raves.
You've been.
They are from Chicago. They were ready to open, or potentially they were ready to open about a year and a half ago.
Mm-hmm.
They just put everything on ice
Yeah.
until things got done.
Yeah.
And now they are absolutely packed, and they've got some
Yeah.
great outdoor seating too. It's quite
Yeah.
a restaurant. And I think you could show up even without a reservation, but you might get very disappointed. But they have a bar there that's first come, first
Yeah.
served, no reservation.
Yeah. It's great.
And I've walked in there 10 times and never been able to get a seat at the bar.
Oh wow.
So
Okay.
But then another plug that we love across the street is Babel.
yes.
Oh, the wine program.
Oh
is,
my gosh, the
pretty
wine
ridiculous.
program is amazing.
Yeah, they that's where you can explore the 2,000 wines that you've never seen before in your life. They've got a really good wine buyer who's from New York, and he
Yep.
does a job of finding little gems. It's probably the most expensive wine list in the world, but it is a good place to try some of the best food. I'm spoiled by that restaurant, and
I love it.
their Italian restaurant, Bestia,
Mhm.
which is just unfair. The food is just too good, and it makes an hour and a half wait worth it, which I hate. But it is a great LA dining location. All right, let's get into wine number 3. And probably the Sancerre is a little bit more appropriate, a girl and the goat, and I'm sure they have a number of good wines, Sancerres there, because they do have a master somm in charge of their wine program. Let me get your impressions of wine number 3.
Three seems to be more complex on the nose
Yeah.
than the previous ones.
Yeah, there's definitely some different things going on. What do you suspect?
Oak. We're muted, aren't we?
I suspect oak and maybe a little bit of what we call Lee stirring, where you get the solids, the yeasts falling down into the bottom of the tanks, and they'll stir that yeast or leave it on contact with the yeast a little bit longer. And I feel like I'm smelling a little bit of that autolytic, which can smell or even feel like oak. So I'm not sure that there's wood on this wine. If there were, it might be a little bit more golden. Let me check out my winemaking notes. I could be wrong. So, again, really about that rocky minerality. And they've got 25 acres. Small family-run producer. This one is imported by a French portfolio that focuses on French restaurants, very classic. And this wine is actually pretty hard to get if you're not a French restaurant, because they don't call on you. I had to go after it. But this guy's considered one of the more talented wine personalities in Sancerre. They are certified biodynamic as well, but you're not ever supposed to know that by smelling the wine. That would be a flaw. So we also often just spend our time talking about what's obvious in the glass. There's a nice high tier quality level to this wine. You can feel it in the mouth, the way the wine's made. Probably also expression kind of relates back to the yields and the better sight. After a static setting period, the juice is racked An alcoholic fermentation with natural yeast takes place. Once completed, the wines are matured on their fine lees in stainless steel, oak, or a combination of each. So there you go. We've got a little bit of oak and a little bit of lees contact in the stainless steel.
Depends upon astrological configurations in treating the earth as a living and receptive organism.
Yeah, any questions there? Biodynamics or others? You know,
We just looked up biodynamic
that's great.
as opposed to organic. We were trying to figure out what the difference between biodynamic and organic is.
Yeah, it's kind of like the difference between vegetarian and vegan.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like a higher level. Biodynamics involves not only one thing that makes it different. You can make pretty much any site organically grown, but you can't make any site biodynamic because it has to have its own its own surroundings. If you were farming right up against a dairy farm, let's say, or a blueberry farm or another property even, and you didn't have your own kind of sanctuary, you couldn't be biodynamic. Biodynamics also limit the use of any type of machinery in the vineyard, only animals. And then there's a whole a list of things you can and cannot do. And the biodynamic farmers tend to support their vineyards with teas that they make from different flowers to help boost the immunity of the vineyard, boost the health of the vineyard. They may even make teas from the manure of the animals, and it's a whole science to it. And then you go to someone who's graduated from a college like UC Davis with their degree in winemaking, and they believe more in the idea that science is driving this type of philosophy, and the biodynamic are a little bit more philosophical in their winemaking practices. So it's a little bit of nature versus nurture in the vineyard and the winemaking. But biodynamic winemakers, you can never tell them they're wrong. They wouldn't listen to you anyway. They are so devout to their practice.
Did you visit this particular winery, the biodynamic winery? And
I have been to Sancerre. I have not been to any of these three producers, but I've been to a few. But I have sold these wines for a while, and I've known some of, especially this last wine, which is a little bit more famous than the other two. I've known it for a while. There are hundreds of small producers of Sancerre. I've had others in my house that I wish I could have right now, but we just can't get them. So I'm always tasting Sancerre, because when you buy, and I tend to buy wines like this 3 cases at a time, and the next time I go back to buy this wine, they will all be gone. And so I'll have to find another one to replace it. If I had a larger warehouse and deeper pockets, maybe I should buy wines 10 cases at a time, but that requires a bigger footprint. So, stylistically, all 3 of the wines are made in very similar fashion. The last wine showcased a little bit of time and wood, potentially even large wood, because they didn't want to make it oaky. They just wanted to give it a little bit of complexity. But I do believe the majority of what we're tasting here is time with the lees, or the yeast. So they collect these grapes in the vineyards, and because they're organic and biodynamic, they didn't add any yeast. They just used the natural yeast that were already on the grapes. Yeast eats the sugar. The lees are the solids that fall down, and they eventually start to die. When they're in the winemaking state of mind in the process, they're still able to contribute to the wine. They do smell the wine in the tank, and they smell that that yeast in the glass. And when it starts to diminish in quality or maybe become too invasive, they'll pull it off of the lees. They can even freshen up the nose of the wine a little bit just by moving the wine from one tank to another. But typically with a wine like this, they wouldn't do that because they don't want any oxygen on these wines. They want to time it just right, get it into the bottle, and then get it to the marketplace. It takes about a year for a wine like this to come into the market. These 19s probably were due here around Christmas of last year, and many of them have taken until now to get here. So there's been a little bit of a pocket where we didn't see a lot of wine coming into the U.S., and because of that, everybody's 17 inventories and 18 inventories got sucked up, and it's going to be even hard to find an 18 Sancerre anywhere. But they would be fine. These wines actually do age beautifully for a couple of years. Then they might depend on a particular plot or producer to make something that's made for long-term aging. But I would love to be drinking these wines right now with another year on them. I think they could even be more interesting. But this is a wine region that kind of celebrates freshness. And soon those 2020s are going to be coming into the inventory for sure. And that's why I say in about a year, it's going to get a little dicey, a little tough. And we might see a lot of alternatives coming in from that area and outside areas like Melanto. So be open-minded to that. There's a world of Sauvignon Blanc. We had a tough 2021 in New Zealand too, though. That's another thing to consider, is that probably half the crop in 2021 in New Zealand got decimated as well. So we got Sauvignon Blanc problems coming up. No New Zealand 2021 and no Sancerre in 2021. So it could be interesting. Good news from California is that we've made it all the way to September. Even though the really big fire that's burning up in Northern California, it seems like it's staying away from the wine regions. That could, of course, change in about a month, but we are hearing some really good things about quality in 2021, Northern California. But I will say firsthand, it's a small vintage. The crops that I'm working with are really, really light and really small. So yields are going to be about 40% of normal, but there are a lot of grapes available, and so I don't think we'll have shortages this year. But we'll be backfilling for a very difficult 2020 vintage in Northern California. So every grape's going to get used this year, I promise. That's kind of the interesting thing that's happening this year. Last year we saw, fruit just not even get picked, and the year before we saw fruit nobody even wanting it in 2019. So there were vineyards that went unpicked but were in good shape. But a lot of wineries were backing away from it because they had so much supply and nowhere to put all that wine. Well, that's our discussion tonight about Sancerre and a little bit of an update. We've also covered a couple of new restaurants for you to visit. Anybody else have any good new restaurants that you visited recently? James, what's your favorite restaurant? It says James on your James iPad, but that's not your name, is it? Lisa, I know you're back there. Tony, do you have a favorite restaurant?
Lately, it's Charcoal Venice.
Awesome. That's a home run. Really good spot. It's by the folks from Melise. They're a more casual spot that you could actually spend more money there than at Melise. You buy the big, heavy, expensive steak. Susan, that's over by you, right? Have you been to Charcoal?
So you're going to any concerts soon? Or
Yeah.
are you going to be at Yo-Yo Ma on Tuesday or not?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
No, I'm going to the Hollywood Bowl tomorrow night. Oh, actually Friday night to see the movie Black
Oh,
Panther.
John Williams?
Black Panther.
Black Panther.
And I'm going tomorrow night to see my favorite new little band called Mind Chatter. And they're playing in a cemetery in West Hollywood.
The famous cemetery?
Yeah.
The one that do the where all the actors are and
Yeah.
wow.
So
Right. Oh, yeah.
Mind Chatter's
Art Carol.
it's just something fun. I'm always looking for new music, and I love to go out to small shows before they fill big arenas, and I'll let you know on the backside how Mind Chatter goes. But I'll say goodnight now, and I'll leave with a little bit of Mind Chatter, because Facebook might not let me play it.
Well, enjoy.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
all of
Hope
you.
to see you soon.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.